All right, we are live. Hi everyone, good evening, namaskar, Jai Hind. I hope you're all well, fine, healthy. And so about a week to go for RMO 2024, and we thought, why not? A lot of people have been asking me, sir, what should be the last week strategy? What are the things that need to be done? मैं क्या क्या नहीं करना चाहिए? So I thought, why not invite the ones who have already cleared INMO, uh, not only RMO but INMO last year, right? So 1 second, let me admit Shameek also. Okay, Shameek is also with us. All right, so we have INMO 2024 2024 INMO bodies. Adit, Aratrik, Shameek. We have Rajit sir with us. तो हम क्या करेंगे? The format would be we'll talk about the preparation which each of them had before RMO 2023. क्या क्या चीजें की थी, क्या क्या चीजें नहीं की थी, and if there was something which was lacking in their preparation which they could have done, they would share that also. And along the way, if there are any other questions, because a lot of students have sent me the questions already, so we'll talk about those questions as we go along the session. So before we start, few words, Rajit sir, if you want to start.
Okay, so hello everyone. So first तो ये जो आज का सेशन है, पहले तो सबको congratulations जिन्होंने IOQM क्लियर किया and they are preparing पूरे जोश से for RMO. ठीक है, तो ये जो 5 बच्चे बैठे हैं तुम्हारे आगे, इन्होंने भी कभी शुरू की थी प्रिपरेशन, इन्होंने कभी लो स्कोर्स किए थे एंड इवेंचुअली बिना हिम्मत हारे इन्होंने INMO भी क्लियर किया एंड अगेन प्रिपेयरिंग फॉर दैट अगेन एज वेल. तो ना इनकी बातें सुनो, हमारे इनपुट्स भी आएंगे एंड कि कैसे इन्होंने किया, क्या क्या गलतियां की, क्या क्या सही चीजें की, so that you can inculcate and make the best out of the remaining time.
Okay, so we'll start with Adit. So Adit, of course, you are already a celebrity. People know you by name, and of course, you keep on. We a lot of students they've come to me and they've especially asked me to thank Adit on their behalf or on their behalf because you have been helping a lot of students online on YouTube, otherwise also. So we'll start with you, Adit. So Pella, how was your RMO preparation journey? And again, if you could throw the light on the kind of books, the kind of material that you did, the mocks that you attempted, and again, last minute tips for the students. So we'll go cyclically. So we'll start with Adit.
Okay, so first of all, hello to everyone on YouTube. I hope I find you in good spirits. My RMO preparation really wasn't too much stuff. Like, I didn't do any books or anything. I mostly just went through like normal theory, like IOQM type theory, but then I did a lot of problems on that from, for example, AOPS. And another source that I did quite a bit during RMO was BMO1. So British Math Olympiad Round 1. Right? Mocks, mainly I did the VOS mocks, but I also did the set of mocks by Agamjeet Singh. If you've heard of him, he's also made a bunch of IOQM mocks. So I did those mocks as well. I feel like the easier mocks in all of the mocks that I did were a lot like confidence boosters. But at the same time, I didn't let the harder mocks get to me because those were kind of like reality checks in a sense that they showed you that, okay, RMO can be this hard. But then I realized that if RMO is this hard for me, then it will be this hard for everyone. And it's going to be equally hard for everyone to get the same amount of marks. So, for example, on the day of RMO, I decided that I'm not going to care about whether I'm solving a set number of questions or how much progress I've made within the first hour or anything, but rather I would care about doing as much as I could with those problems. Because of course, if it's a really bad RMO, like a really hard one, then it's possible that the cutoff is just one question, right? As for some last minute tips, so what I've heard from the people who also attended RMO with me was that they were marked like quite harshly in the sense that they lost marks where they didn't deserve to in a lot of places. I fortunately didn't have that happen with me. And I think the main reason that happened was because I was highly focused on my proofwriting skills from that time itself. So for proofwriting, I think Evan Chen has a document on it, and there's also a thing on the AOPS blog if you want to have a look at that. And I feel like, especially in RMO, being clear about your proofwriting is important because the graders aren't necessarily top of their class. So that means that sometimes things which are obvious to you have to be explained a bit more. Like, and this is a bit overkill, but in the actual exam, for example, for P1, I proved that squares are 0 or 1 mod 3. Like, that's how detailed I went into everything.
Or you proved the congruence also.
Yes.
It was not required.
Yeah. But I didn't want to take any risks.
Okay. And how much did you score?
I scored 42.
Okay. And what are the problems that you did right? P1?
P1 and P2 I got full, then P6 I got partials.
Okay.
So my strategy for the exam day was mostly that I went with the question that looked the nicest because that meant I would be able to work on it the most. As it turned out, that was like P2, and I ended up solving P2 within the first hour.
Okay. So, So again, talking about the time that you took. So can you roughly tell us about the time that you took in solving P1, P2, P6, and how did you go about it?
P1 and P2 both took me like around 1 hour each. P2, it took me an hour just to like figure out the angle chase because I wasn't very good at angle chasing at the time. P1, I was mostly done with everything in 15 minutes, except I wasn't sure. Like, I got the 12 divides M in that one, but I wasn't sure how to prove that M divides 12 until a lot of time later when I realized that I should just look for small A, B, C, D that work. So that took a lot of time for sure. P6, I thought I got a solution and I spent literally the last 2 minutes writing it up. And then I realized that I misread the question, but nonetheless, I got a decent amount of partials.
Okay. And did you, waste your time? How much time did you waste on the questions wherein you did not get marks? P3, P4, P5?
I didn't spend much time on them, to be honest,
Okay.
because
So whatever you tried gave you results.
yeah,
And you are very sure that you had to try P1, P2, P6?
yes.
Great. Great. Okay. What are the tips for the last week, Adit? So what would you advise the junior?
Do not underestimate inequalities. हर साल आता ही है. So probably try and focus on those. As you might notice, I didn't solve the inequality.
And which was, I think, simpler.
P5. Yeah, it was simple.
What else?
And also focus on proofwriting, of course, because you never know about how the graders will feel.
Okay. So again, about proofwriting, I would advise and see. So as Adit mentioned, they might not be at the top of the class, but again, I do believe that region-wise it varies. So, for example, Adit, if his paper would have checked in maybe a state like Jharkhand, Bihar, he would have gotten different marks, right? So I'm quite sure about it. But again, having said that, उस region के सभी graders, same graders ही mark करते हैं. So it does not make any difference because the number of selections are going to be region based. So it does not matter. So yes. So what was the cutoff from Bangalore? Karnataka.
Cutoff, if I remember correctly, was around half of my score. So 20 to 22-ish.
Okay. So cutoff was 22 to 26. Great. Good. So before we take up more questions, so I would want to go to Aratrik. So Aratrik, if you could share your story.
Yeah. So like for RMO, I did not do that much theory. So my main thing was mainly doing problems, past mocks, past papers. I did lots of past RMOs and I did some of the INMO papers too. And for theory, it was mainly I did excursion and I did challenges and thrills. Those were the two books that I did for theory.
Any specific topic bifurcation? कौन से excursion से किए, कौन से challenges?
So I did the geometry part from challenges and thrills. There were I think a few chapters, and I did number theory, and algebra from excursion back then.
Okay, तो
And I
जैसे
also,
आदित ने बोला कि inequalities important है. Did you do anything for inequalities?
inequalities, I did a bit from excursion, though not much.
Okay. And what problems did you do right?
In the exam, I did problem 1, which 2, and I think problem 5, the inequality one.
Okay. Or
So 1 and 2 were full perfect scores, and 5 was a partial one, I guess.
and total score?
46.
Okay. Was 46. Perfect.
Yeah.
Great. And any advice that you want to give Aratrik last week? क्या क्या करना चाहिए? How many mocks did you? I mean, did you attend mocks?
Yeah, I attempted the Vedantu mocks. Like, they helped me get a good idea of where I stood.
Okay. And how many marks were you scoring in mocks?
Mocks, like, they varied. Like, some of the easier ones, I used to score a bit high, like on the 60 to 80 side. And the harder ones, they used to go a bit low, or maybe 20 to 30, or sometimes even lower.
Okay, great. So any last week tips? What should be done on the last week for the students who are appearing for the first time? So last year it was your first attempt.
Yeah, so like, I have more like exam specific tips. Like, during the exam, focus on your strengths. Like, say if geometry is your strength, then focus on it. And like, try to find the problem that you think will be the easiest. But don't spend too much time on a problem. So if you get stuck, move on and try some other. Like, when I was giving the exam, I tried P1 first because it seemed simple, but I did not get it right on the first try. So I moved on to P2 and got it pretty fast. So that was a huge confidence booster. And then I went back and
So basically, if you are able to solve even a single problem in first half hour, maybe 1 hour, maybe 45 minutes, it gives you a lot of confidence because the cutoff from most of the regions is less than 1 mark, 17 marks. At least it was the case last year. But again, Aratrik, Adit, they are from the states which are very competitive, and Shameek also, West Bengal. Of course, they had to do much more than one problem. But for most of the cases, I think it used to be one question only. So perfect. And Adit, do you remember? I mean, you are not a very big fan of giving mocks. I had to push you to give INMO mocks also last year. But if you remember your average scores in the RMO mocks that you gave.
Not really. I really don't remember my mock scores.
Okay, मतलब नहीं दिया था तूने.
याद नहीं है scores.
Alright.
बस
But दिए थे.
दिए थे.
Okay. All right. So moving
देखिए,
on.
बस check नहीं किए थे बस कि कितने आए.
Okay. Moving on to Shameek. So Shameek is also from West Bengal and he's in grade 10th. Shameek, quickly your story before we take up questions.
So first of all, I'm currently in grade 11th.
Oh,
I
yes.
was in grade 10th
Yes,
when I
last year,
gave
yes.
RMO last year. And like, first of all, I would like to give some advice on which sort of theory like one should have done or one should do. It is like excursion should be good enough. And if you like have a really good liking for one of the topics, then you should choose a book. Like for geometry, if you really like geometry and want to do some stuff, then take A Beautiful Journey Through Olympiad Geometry or Ivan Chen's book called EGMO. So those books are really great for geometry. And then if you want to do NT, for example, you could do Modern Olympiad Number Theory. So these books are like, if you have done excursion and want to do something more from your side, it's totally up to you. But your first priority should always be excursion. Now, about practice, what I usually did is I just did the mocks and the PYQs which were in excursion. I found that to be enough for myself. Like I was content with that. Like if you need more, like Vedantu mocks are there, and also like as Adit said, Agamjeet Singh posts mocks on his websites, so that might be of help. About how you should approach the exam, the thing is like you should not be stressed about the exam. Like yes, it is an exam, but what is more important, like you have a passion for mathematics. So that is what you should focus more on, not like the exam itself. Because as soon as look at it as an exam, then you like try to see all these metrics, all these scores, and you try to maximize stuff. It like gets less enjoyable. That's what I would say. Look at it as just some fun contest which you are giving, and during the exam, do not ever start with the first problem. Like you should read through all of them and see which problem like suits you the best, or like you have prepared for the best. Because
Okay.
what mostly happens is you start with a problem, and if that goes bad, then for me personally, that is a really big setback. And I have faced in other contests, I've faced trouble when the first problem went bad and then the next stuff didn't go so well. So choosing your first problem is really important. If the first problem is good, it's more likely that you will be doing good in the
Yeah,
subsequent
so
ones.
basically, if you're able to do first problem, as Adit and Aratrik also mentioned, in the first half an hour, maybe 45 minutes, so it gives you a lot of confidence. And as I mentioned, from most of the states, one problem is good enough to get you through. But again, having said that, even from the competitive states, if you're able to do a problem in the first 45 minutes, I mean, that gives you a lot of confidence. And compare that to a situation wherein you are not able to solve a question in, let's say, first 1.5 hours, if you've chosen a question which is not suitable for you, and even if the other questions are on the easier side, it is going to put a lot of pressure on you, right? So this is what Shameek wants to say. Perfect, Shameek. So choose questions wisely. So again, know your strengths and read all the questions before you pick up a question to start with, and probably try to pick a question which you'll be able to solve in the first maybe 1 hour, because that is going to give you a lot of confidence, as Shameek mentioned. Okay. Last week, Shameek, last week tips.
Last week tips, like right now, I would say don't focus on big theory. Like don't try to do big stuff. Just look over what you have already studied. Like mostly try to revise what you have studied earlier in the year. Like those things, revise those, and focus mostly on mocks. But like don't constantly keep doing mocks. Like do some other problems and stuff too. Like sometimes doing mocks continuously can be boring, and so like keep stuff varied so you don't get tired.
Okay.
And also about the day before the exam, try to not keep anything big on that day. Like don't do really heavy difficult mocks or anything like that.
Perfect. Perfect, Shameek. So now we are open to the questions. So Adit is already answering the questions on the chat. So if there are Adit, if there is any question that you think is noteworthy of answering, please share.
We have
Or
asking if we have any tips for him.
sorry,
We have Jay Agarwal right now asking for tips.
Jay Agarwal. ये real Jay Agarwal है क्या?
I'm
So
hoping
Jay,
that
if you are real, so you can join the session also.
Yeah, I think that's the real guy.
Okay, so Rajit sir, if you could share the session link with Jay, maybe he will be able to join.
yes, sir.
Is Jay in the level 10 group? No. आपके पास नंबर है जय का?
Adit, I guess you can share. You have the link for this meeting.
I do not put names on contacts, so I have no idea who's contact, like which
Okay.
contact.
अरे यार, I'll share.
I'll share the meeting, just meeting link with you.
हाँ मैं कर रहा हूँ. Jay, I'm sending you the link if you could join. And if there is any other INMO body,
Oh,
Jay,
Jay is saying he won't be able to join. So
anyways, I'll send him the link. Okay. All right. So one thing is how would you ensure the partial marking. So did you concentrate, any of you concentrate on getting the partials? कि अगर क्वेश्चन नहीं हुआ तो कम से कम कुछ पार्सल्स ले आते हैं, मतलब was this an idea or thought in your mind before RMO or INMO?
Sir,
RMO,
not
no.
in yeah, it
Okay,
wasn't INMO.
sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah, it was not for RMO, but in INMO it was the idea. Like parcels were important.
So RMO में कभी भी ये नहीं सोचा कि partial marking ले लेते हैं, because because of course it did not make sense for these people, because as I said, Adit is from Karnataka, these two are from West Bengal. So partial अगर आ भी जाते किसी भी क्वेश्चन में, it would not have mattered, because cut off तो सॉल्व करने के लिए 2 क्वेश्चन तो कम से कम करने ही थे इन दोनों रीजन से. But okay, so if you have to concentrate on partials, right? So I mean, just taking this question further, अगर तुम्हें लगा है कि मुझे partials लेने हैं, so what is there any strategy, defined strategy for partials? Anyone?
Well, INMO, I wanted a lot of partials. So what I did is I just wrote everything that I knew. Like even the most trivial thing, I wrote it down. Except in P5 and P6, I forgot to do it and I lost marks there because both of those were important. So everything is important, no matter how trivial. Yeah, nice diagrams are good.
And as Adit mentioned, he also proved the congruence.
Yeah, just prove a lot of stuff.
Okay.
And one thing you can do, which isn't very likely to work in INMO, but probably quite likely to work in RMO, depending on state, is bluff. If you think something is true, say that it's true. Don't explain, complete the solution.
See, what my advice would be, okay, bluffing sometimes work. It has worked for some of our students before. But my advice would be to keep the bluff at the last, because if you keep it at the beginning, and if there is a smart invigilator, no, the checker, who is able to catch that bluff, he is going to definitely have a very negative impression on his mind. And let's say if he wants to give you, even though the partials that he would give you are defined, right? So there's a proper thing that on the basis of which he is will be giving you partials, but again, is definitely going to have some negative impression. And even if on the question which is done at the end, even if that is fully correct, he might look to cut your marks. And अगर वो कुछ देखने में आ जाते हैं to cut your marks, of course he is going to cut the marks. So my advice is, if you have to bluff, that should be at the last, so that once your entire paper is checked, then of course you can always try that at the end. But again, bluffing is something that definitely works at some of the centers. I hope MTI team is not looking at this particular session, but yes, it definitely works for some session, but not all.
I would like to argue that I accidentally bluffed on P2 of INMO. I didn't think of it as bluffing, but apparently it was bluffing, and it worked out.
Oh, you bluffed P2?
On accident.
Oh, how is bluffing an accident?
What I did is basically, P2 was the combi, right? I didn't have any ideas apart from some very intuitive, notions about why the problem works. So what I did is I just stated those okay, this is true. One sec, my doorbell's ringing. Is it fine if I get it? I'll just get the door. Is that fine?
Yeah. Okay, how about you, Aratrik, Shameek? Did you, focus on getting the partials?
Okay,
yeah.
Can I go first?
Yeah.
So what I would say is, focusing on partials should be the last minute resort, in the last 1 hour or half an hour. Do not mostly think of partials before that. Try to do your problem as much as you can. Apart from that, I would like to say that write everything that you are thinking of down, because that gets useful when you are low on time. So if you're thinking of something and you have it written down, you can mostly use some star marks and refer to it somehow if 10 minutes are left. Also, don't cut something out unless you're 100% sure that it's wrong, because I have heard of a few people who have cut out their answer, then cut out the cuts, and then written, okay, this was the correct answer. Please look at it. So try not to cut stuff down unless you're 100% sure that it is wrong. And about bluffing, like, just be careful when you're bluffing. Keep it at the end, just like Abhay has said, and try not to do it as much as you can.
Okay, write everything down. And again, this is a very good point. Do not cut unless you are sure it is wrong. Right. So this is something which is very important. And as Shameek mentioned, there are a lot of students who, they had cut. And in the mocks also, right? So when we check a lot of mocks, बहुत सारे बच्चे कुछ लिख के, even if they've written it correctly, they would cancel it down and, I don't know, whatever reason they would cancel it. And ultimately, अगर मुझे कुछ parcels भी देने होते हैं, I am not able to give them. Okay, one more important thing is, so when you solve a problem, right? So of course you start doing the problem, the rough work, and then you put it in the fair, right? So how does it work for each and every one of you? So Adit, starting with you. So if there's a problem, how do you go about it? So again, if this is an RMO paper, you have there's a problem which is there. So you try to start with the writing on the question paper on the rough sheet, or how do you go about it?
Well, in RMO and INMO, I used to be very particular about any difference between rough and fair. But later on, I've just realized that rough equals fair. So.
Okay. How about, so basically, whatever idea is there in the mind, just try to put it down. Right. So because there are certain students which I know who would try to do something in the rough, and once they are very sure about it, then they would write nicely in the fair. And but again, those are pros, right? So they know that they are definitely going to find a solution, and it is going to be right. Okay, Aratrik, how about you? So how do you go about? Yes,
I just like to add that the reason you should do this is because unless there's the word rough written on a paper, the grader has to read every single little detail on it. And if they have to read every single little detail on it, then there's no chance of them missing anything. So.
Great. So grader will read everything unless.
One more thing जो मतलब इनकी बातों को सुनकर मुझे याद आया, ये मिस्टेक मैंने की थी एक सब्जेक्टिव पेपर में अपने. If you figure out a solution, don't wait for the last. कि मतलब last में जाके लिखूंगा. You may tend to forget some detail or something, and वो मिस हो जाएगा बीच में, या फिर तुम्हें पता लगेगा टाइम पे, ओ ये तो फिगर आउट ही नहीं किया था, ये तो गलत चेक हुआ था. तो जो तुम्हारा एक शॉर्ट सॉल्यूशन होगा वो खराब हो जाएगा.
Okay, Adit, anything from your side?
Okay, speaking of this write immediately thing, it might not matter that much in RMO, but it definitely matters at least in the higher stages. Before going and putting your pencil on the paper or pen on the paper to write your solution, spend 5 minutes thinking about, unless you don't have time, spend 5 minutes thinking about how you can write your solution better, so that it just comes out cleaner and the graders will be able to understand it better.
Okay, so like I have one more question from you all. कि मतलब ये कि let's say you are able to figure out a solution in last 5 to 10 minutes, and now you have two options. कि देखो solution या तो detail से लिखना शुरू करो and you have to leave it in between. तो ये बहुत टाइम में पूरा होगा नहीं. या फिर it's better to just write the idea कि इसको ऐसे से proceed करेंगे and you will get the answer. So, what is your say on that?
I would try to go on a middle ground of both. Like, just giving the sketch of the proof will not be fetching full marks. Like, most of the time, that's how the rubrics are made. So, just giving the sketch does not fetch full marks. But, like, what I would try to do is write the sketch in such a way that it sounds convincing. Like, since it is RMO and a little bit of bluff, you can get away with a little bit of bluff. So I would try to use that as an advantage and try to write some convincing sketch. So basically make it sound as convincing as possible while still having some substance of truth in it.
Okay. Okay, so going to Adit, Aratrik. So Aratrik, how did you approach the question? So did you write a rough sketch directly on the rough or directly
Okay.
fair? What do you do?
Yeah, so Rajesh sir mentioned, like one of the main things is to write the solution immediately. Like I got away with not writing the solution immediately till like INMO, and after that all these little things like come back and bite you in the TSPs, because all these things start mattering then. So what happens is you think you've got the solution, you write it in rough, and you're too lazy to write it that time, so you leave it for the end, the last 1 hour, and then you come when once you come back, you have to once again think about the solution because you have to write it again properly in detail, and then you find some mistake in the solution and you have to just start back once again, and that wastes a lot of time.
Yes, in fact, the thing that you mentioned. So Gunjan faced this in EGMO last year, right? So she had figured out a solution of one of the problems which she had written in the rough, and she thought she would write it later. But again,
Is this the if and only if thing?
Sorry.
Is this the if and only if thing? Where she had like some error on
Yes,
if
yes,
and only.
yes.
Ah.
So she of course missed out on gold. So great. Okay, so students are also asking what if I write two solutions? Okay, why would you want to do that? Okay, so one of the reasons you would want to write two solutions is if you're not sure of any one of them, right? So I doubt कि अगर दो solutions हैं दोनों के अंदर partials हैं, so how does it work out? Does anyone know? So if a student has written two solutions and none of them are correct, all right, so partial in both, so what is going to happen? Does anyone know about this, Shameek?
I don't think scores are additive. Like there's separate.
Of course, they are
marks.
not additive. But I
There's-
think which solution are they going to consider?
I would like to think of it as it depends on how the grader feels.
Ideally, it's the first one.
Like on RMO, like I would also not be able to say much, but it's probably how the grader feels. But like
On TSCs, they probably go for the better.
Yes. How you could improve, like how you could have a higher chance of getting partials from both is separate out each of your claims or lemmas as like give a heading called claim, then write it. So then the grader sees it as a separate point in your solution, and you might get a bonus point for that itself, like for separating it out. Like because that makes it more visible to the grader, and that can help.
And this
in
is
these
something
sorts
which
of
is very
situations.
important. Thank you for mentioning this, because if there is something that is obvious in the problem, try to claim that and then prove it. It is very important to write claim, right? Because it gives the grader that you know your stuff, whatever you're writing, right? So of course मुझे लगता है कि RMO के अंदर ये इतना ज़्यादा नहीं मैटर करता, because a lot of students are giving RMO for the first time and graders also know the same, right? That they don't have a formal practice in subjective writing. I've seen a lot of students, they have been very bad at writing. But again, if I believe you are able to express whatever you're writing in a nicer manner, it does not matter, whether you write WLOG or whether you write this claim or thing. But again, it is always good to have these things. So again, for that, I would advise to go through the solutions of the RMO previous year questions and INMO, formal solutions of RMO previous year questions and INMO previous year questions. That is going to give you some idea of how to write and go about it. Having said that, I believe if you're able to express everything in the best possible way, even in the layman's language, it is good enough.
So even ये जो है ना claim dilemmas वाली thing, like not just RMO or INMO, but if you go for like high level mathematics also, so like वो एक proof writing का एक idea क्या होता है उनका, so they claim that okay, this statement is true, and if its proof is not relevant for the entire solution, कि मतलब वो solution को कुछ extra add नहीं करेगा, so they prove the things at the end, and they like create a story kind of thing, a proper like a path of the proof, and writing this way, like पहले lemma लिखा and उसको फिर उसके आगे story continue की, instead of just mixing and matching everything. So this is a very nice way of writing, और ये higher mathematics में यही use होता है. Like I've seen ample of solutions being in ISI, or this is actually the way of writing जो higher mathematics में चलती है, जो कोई mathematician use करेगा in general.
Okay. Great.
Since you mentioned WLOG, I think it really has to be picked up as an issue which a lot of people have during RMO. Because like also I took a session on VOS. I saw a lot of people really had this issue of not knowing when to WLOG. Like there's this problem which I was doing, an algebra problem, inequality. The inequality was cyclic and they said, let's do a WLOG, which to the initiated or to the experienced doesn't make sense at all, because you can only do it when like the terms are symmetric in the expression. So
Right.
I think it's important to know when you can use WLOG and other things like that before like actually using them, because I think a lot of people just think of it as a tool which you can randomly say WLOG and your life problems are solved, which is not true. There's a lot of substance behind it. And when you're saying WLOG, you're saying a lot more than those 4 letters.
Yes. So again, as he mentioned, if you have to use any technical term, use it only when you know it, right? Otherwise, do not use it. Simple, right? So amazing. So Adit, did you tell in the VO session when to use WLOG? Did you explain them?
I mean, I tried.
Okay, great. So Aratrik, you have a session today, right?
Yeah, for this.
Okay, so Aratrik is going to take a session in today's RMO camp. Adit has already taken 2 sessions. Shameek has already taken a session. So how was Adit? How was the teaching experience and Shameek? So Aratrik, of course, is going to experience it for the first time today. But Adit, how about you?
Teaching is hard.
Okay, so what topics did you?
The first session, which didn't go too well, was more of a mixed problem solving session.
Okay,
So that included that inequality thing. And I started off quite well in that, I feel, but then by the middle of it, I feel like not a lot of people really understood where I was going with things.
because of the level that you took.
Yeah, apparently.
Okay.
So then the next session, I decided to like make sure everyone is with me while I'm doing the session. So it was a functional equation session. I started out with asking how many people here know what a function is. The poll results came in, and 40% of the people had zero idea. So
Welcome to
and
teaching.
that's not necessarily like a bad thing. Like that's not something to feel bad for, because you just didn't know what it was. It's not a big deal. But that meant that I had to start from the basics, and I feel like that's a good thing that I did. Because then everyone was on the same ground about what a function is, what injectivity is, and everyone had some base level to start solving. So I think when it came to teaching, I found that starting off extremely easy, even like almost trivial, is good.
Amazing. So again, the only problem with this is the students who know what functional equations are, they tend to get bored. Again, for those, again, one of the
I
things
had
that we follow.
something ready for that.
Yes. So again, this is the thumb rule that we follow. For those who already know the stuff,
yeah,
there are certain
I
questions.
kept four FEs, and I was like, if you already know what we're doing at the current moment, solve these.
Amazing.
So they can keep solving.
Great. How about you, Shameek?
I would agree with Adit on the comment that teaching is hard, especially when there are like 60 people. What I felt was hard is mainly following the chat, because I don't know, it just goes too fast for me, I guess. I can't keep up with it, maybe. But yeah, like what is hard is like everyone has a different level of understanding. So, and you got to cater to all of them. You got to keep everyone interested, right? So that is a challenge, and like we have to deal with it. Yeah, that's
great. So, Aratrik, you already gotten some tips for today's session.
Yeah.
So, all the best. Okay. So, I think mostly we are done with most of the questions, and these are the questions that most of the students had. So we've covered everything. So what I'll do is, so these are the pointers which have been given by Shameek, Aratrik, and Adit. So I'll try to put this in PDF and put this in the description also. Otherwise, of course, they're there. Right. So, Shameek, we forgot to write your marks.
I scored 64.
2023 64 marks. And what problems did you do?
I did P1, P2, P4, and I think P5 was partial.
Perfect. Amazing.
Just one thing, Shameek, I think IOQ में कितने marks थे हमारे?
In IOQM, it was 15.
Yeah, तो एक ये बहुत बड़ी motivation है, like
yes.
you know, IOQM में कम होने का मतलब ये नहीं you are not good for like RMO, so तुमसे clear नहीं होगा. Like he had one of the best marks at RMO.
Right, so this should act as a lot of motivation, guys. Again, so what happens is sometimes, most of the time, students tend to relate कि यार मेरे IOQM में बहुत कम marks हैं, so RMO is also going to be the proportional. It is not same. Even Adit, how much did you get in IOQM?
This year I got 29, which is decent. Like in 9th, I got 29, which is decent, but I think 8th ka mera sabko pata hai at this point.
So Adit had scored 29 in IOQM and 42 in RMO. And Aratrik, yours IOQM score?
I scored around 37.
37. Okay, I think it made a AP, 37, 46, and it was 55.
55.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So you can see, guys, and this is a perfect example. So do not, try to think कि IOQM में कम marks मतलब RMO is going to be the same, and the person who scored more than you in IOQM is going to score in more in RMO, and this is the perfect example. Right? Shameek, I mean, it's a great inspirational, thing. 15 marks in IOQM, and of course, he jumped from 15 to 64 in RMO. And of course, IOQM last year was pretty hard. And of course, I'm very sure, Shameek, 15 marks, there would be a lot of marks wherein you could have scored, but you did not score, right? So you missed out on a lot of, easy markers. What was the potential score last year?
I don't remember. It was 30-ish, I think.
30-ish, and you ended up scoring 50% of the marks.
Did a lot of sillies.
Okay. Right. So this should act as a lot of motivation, right? So do not keep anything on your head, right? That you scored pretty less as compared to other person in IOQM. RMO is totally a different ball game. You have to think it through. You get marks for partials. You do not get marks for partials in IOQM. So it's a totally different game, right? So I am yet to see a student who is done really well in IOQM also. I mean, of course, the top scorer in IOQM, top scorer in RMO. It does not happen, right? So students have done really well in RMO. They had decent marks in IOQM or the other way around, right? So it's a totally different ball game. So all the best, guys, and thank you, Adit, Aratrik, Shameek, Rajit sir, for your time and sharing all the valuable things that you had experienced the last year. And of course, Adit, Shameek has already taken session. आज जो बच्चे RMO camp के अंदर हैं, Aratrik is going to take the session for those students. It is going to be in geometry, Aratrik.
Yeah, power of point and analysis.
Power
of point and analysis.
Okay, power. Great. So thank you for all the help, guys, that you have been doing, and for everyone, right? So YouTube people also, otherwise also, a lot of people try to connect to you, and you tend to help a lot. And this is the best way of sharing the knowledge, right? So thank you so much. Any other last minute tip if anyone wants to share? He can. Otherwise, we'll end the session. Yes,
I think I would want to share something that if there are two parts in a problem and you think part 2 is significantly easier, you can assume and if part 2 depends on part 1, you can assume part 1 to be true and prove part 2.
That is actually right.
Okay, so
yeah, that's one thing.
This is something which is very important, and this is definitely going to help you score marks. So if there are two parts to a problem, and this happens a lot of times. So there are two parts, and normally it happens is there's part A, you have to prove something in part A, and on the basis of what is to be proved in part A, you have to prove something in part B. So if you're not able to prove part A, of course, you can assume part A to be true and then do part B, at least get the partials for part B, right? So this is something that
Alternatively, you can assume part B to be true and prove part A. That happens sometimes where part B is easier than part 1.
yes.
And along the same lines, I'd like to talk about some problems have disguised 2 parts in a sense. Like if we look at some problems where the question is find the minimum or find the maximum or find all possible things, those are by themselves 2-part problems in a sense, where the first part is proving that the thing is in fact minimal or in fact maximal or whatever you wanted to satisfy. And the second one is showing that it's attainable. So for any idea, if you want to see similar to that, you can, for example, look at 2024 INMO problem 2. It's quite a similar type of problem. So you can see what I mean. If you see the solution, they're going to say, this is the answer, this is how you achieve it, and now we prove that this is the answer.
Okay, so basically what he's saying is there are a lot of problems that we have given in this year mocks also. So if the question is find the minimum value of something, right? So if you only write the minimum value, even if that is true, that is not going to fetch you marks, right? So you have to show that this is minimum. How is this minimum? And this is achievable also, right? For example, this kind of happens in AMGM. So when you apply AMGM, you might attain a certain value. You might find a minimum value of something, but again, you have to show that this is attainable. When is this attainable? When all the numbers are equal, right? So you have to prove that also. Only then you will be able to get the marks, right? So this is something which is very important. So if the problem is find the minimum value, only writing the minimum value randomly is not going to fetch you marks. So this is what Adit means.
Oh,
So
and similarly,
triangle inequality as well.
yeah. And similarly, like if you're doing a problem where they ask you to find the minimum, that minimum should not be in terms of variables. There should be no variables on there. There should be only one constant. Because I've seen some people who claim that the minimum to this expression is A plus B plus C or something, which is just absurd. So the minimum should be constant. And there are some cases where you can't prove attainability, but that has to be in some sense like there's a term which is more sophisticated than the minimum called the infimum, if you want to study about that. But in some cases, the minimum isn't achievable, but nothing better is like the minimum. So you have to prove that in those cases.
Awesome. Thank you, Adit. Thank you so much. Shameek, Aratrik, thank you so much. Thank you, Rajat sir, for all the tips. I think we've covered almost everything which students had their doubts in. And I'm sure they're going to do really well in RMO. There are going to be a couple of more sessions on RMO, which I will be planning. So one is on, okay. So Adit, one and everyone else, last question before we leave is students ask what are the valid lemmas or theorems? Adit would not be able to answer this because he proved confidence also, right? So my advice is anything that you're using, if you have time and you do have time, try to prove it if the proof is simple. For example, Cauchy-Schwarz, and even something like Cauchy-Schwarz. I think Cauchy-Schwarz is something which is acceptable, but even Cauchy-Schwarz has a one-line proof. T2's lemma has one-line proof, right? So although I will be coming up with a session very soon on the valid proofs and lemmas, but anything that you want to add to this, Adit, before we leave? Or Shameek, anyone? Shameek?
Okay, fine. Yeah, so I would like to say that anything in excursion you can probably safely use, but I would advise you to write down the statement of the theorem. Like, write the statement properly. Like, it doesn't have to be exactly the same how it is written in the book, but it has to be valid. That's all. On the safer side, just write the statement when you're using it. Like,
yes, and
name of the theorem and statement of the theorem.
Yeah.
And if you forget the name, write the statement.
And I'd like to add, ideally, if you don't have the time to write the proof for any reason, then you should provide at least some source that it is available in this book, for example, and some decent source. Like, don't quote a handout.
No, yeah. So decent quotes, decent source would be all the books which are recommended by the HPSCSE, right? So of course there are all the standard books like Curzon, SCT, PCM, then this mathematical circles. So all these books are already are there officially on the HPSCSE website. So of course, if there is a lemma or a theorem which is there in any of the books which are recommended by HPSCSE, you can also always mention the source of the book also. Great. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. And if there are any other questions our audience has on YouTube, so please put that in the comment section. We will definitely try get these guys to answer those. Thank you so much, and thank you for your time, Adit, Rajat sir, Shameek, and Aratrik. All the best, everyone, for RMO 2024. Let us try to crack and try to come here again for the celebrations. Bye, everyone.